All right, so we all know staying on top of the news can feel like, well, a second job, right?
Definitely.
I mean, who has the time to really dig into every story?
It's a lot to process.
Exactly. And that's where we come in, right?
Yeah, to break it all down.
We connect the dots, try to make sense of the headlines that really matter.
The ones with the biggest impact.
So think of this deep dive as like your cheat sheet for understanding what's going on in the world right now. And today, it's a wild mix, let me tell you.
It really is. A lot to unpack.
We're talking Ukraine, obviously, with all the latest there. And President Trump's, well, shifting approach, you could say.
Yeah. Shifting is one way to put it.
Then we've got these trade tariffs he's planning. Liberation Day, he's calling it. Yikes.
Yeah, the markets are already reacting, that's for sure.
Big time. And then Elon Musk. The guy's everywhere these days. Well, he's now diving headfirst into Wisconsin politics.
Surprising move.
It is. And then we've got, and this one's a little out there, but the threat of an EMP attack, like a real EMP.
Right.
And then, to top it all off, a leaked signal chat from the Trump administration. Talk about a security slip-up, plus the buzz around a possible third presidential term. I mean, come on.
Seriously, where do we even begin?
Right. So our mission, as always, is to sort through all of this, lay it all out for you, nice and simple, straight from the sources, so you get a clear, unbiased picture of what's going on.
No spin, just the facts.
Exactly. And, especially as American citizens, I think it's important to understand what these things could actually mean for us day to day, right?
Totally. It's about connecting the dots to your life.
So we're going to look at all the different angles, all the perspectives, and try to present it as fairly as possible.
No taking sides here.
Absolutely not. Okay, let's jump in. Ukraine, first up. Zelenskyy, well, he's been making headlines. He wants tougher action against Russia. Way tougher.
Yeah, he's not holding back.
He's saying these long-range strikes, they show Russia doesn't even want to talk, about peace, no interest in diplomacy.
He's basically saying they're not negotiating in good faith.
Exactly. And he even pointed out that the U.S., we proposed a ceasefire, no strings attached, and what did Russia do? More attacks.
Not exactly a sign of de-escalation, is it?
Not at all. So what does Zelenskyy want? More sanctions, stronger air defenses for Ukraine, and, more unity from the international community? Like, everyone get on the same page.
He's definitely feeling the pressure. I mean, can you blame him?
No, not at all. And the reports coming out of Ukraine, they're pretty grim. Both sides agreed to this pause in attacks, right, in the Black Sea and on energy infrastructure. But almost immediately, they're accusing each other of breaking it.
Like within hours. It shows how fragile any kind of agreement is right now.
For sure. And Zelenskyy is reporting more strikes and shelling across 7 regions. 7.
Yeah, it's clear this conflict is far from over, despite any talk of ceasefires.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's talk about President Trump. He had some strong words about Putin criticizing Zelenskyy and suggesting he should be removed. He said he was very angry about it.
That's interesting. Angry is a strong word. It's definitely a shift in tone from how he's talked about Putin in the past.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
And, he even mentioned considering new sanctions on Russian oil exports and, get this, on the countries buying that oil.
Whoa. Okay, now that would be a big deal.
Right. And he specifically named China and India. So think about the implications of that.
Huge impact globally, for sure. It would really disrupt the energy market.
Yeah. I mean, targeting those exports, that's hitting Russia right where it hurts, economically speaking. But here's the thing. He then turns around and says, there's been significant progress towards ending the war.
Wait, so which is it? Sanctions or progress? It's a bit confusing.
Right. It's like 2 completely different approaches.
Yeah.
And he also said he trusts Putin to keep his word. I mean, what do you make of that?
As an American citizen, you have to wonder, is he playing good cop, bad cop? Is this a strategy? We don't know.
Exactly. He also mentioned being disappointed in Putin's actions and even suggested there's a psychological deadline for a ceasefire. Like, his patience is wearing thin.
Maybe a way to pressure Putin. Who knows?
But then, the very next day, the Kremlin spokesperson says Putin is absolutely open to contacts with President Trump.
So the door's still open for dialogue, at least.
Right. It's a mess, basically. I mean, what's the takeaway here?
Well, it's complicated, clearly. The U.S. is trying to walk this tightrope, supporting Ukraine, but also trying to avoid a wider conflict.
And trying to figure out how to deal with Putin.
Exactly. So Trump's saying all these different things. It could mean he's changing his strategy, but honestly, who knows what he'll actually do?
Right. And meanwhile, the fighting continues. That pause we talked about. Yeah, that didn't last long.
Nope. back to accusations and attacks.
Ukraine reported this massive Russian attack overnight, missiles and a ton of drones
Yeah.
hitting multiple regions. And Russia claims they shot down a bunch of Ukrainian drones over their own territory.
It just goes to show, despite any talk, diplomacy, whatever, the war is still raging.
All right, let's shift gears for a minute, bring it back home. Let's talk about President Trump's Liberation Day, this whole tariff thing he's got planned for Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one. And the markets are definitely not happy about it.
Not at all. Monday was rough. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow, all down significantly.
And, when the markets freak out, it's usually a sign that people are worried about the economy.
Right, absolutely. And it makes sense. I mean, look at the numbers. The S&P 500, it's wiped out all its gains for the year. And since the election, back to levels we haven't seen since September.
Ouch. Yeah, and the NASDAQ's fall has been even worse. There's talk of this being the worst quarter for stocks in 3 years.
So what's got everyone so spooked? Well, these tariffs.
Yeah. The scope of these tariffs, it's what's got people concerned. Trump said they'd start with all countries.
All countries.
Yeah, that's a huge expansion from anything he's done before.
It sounds like he's not messing around.
And a lot of experts are worried, rightfully so, about the impact on economic growth. Both CNBC economists and Goldman Sachs have actually lowered their GDP forecasts.
Not a good sign.
And Goldman Sachs has also raised the odds of a recession. They've even lowered their expectations for S&P 500 company earnings, they say, because of the tariffs, weaker growth, and, get this, higher inflation.
So basically a triple whammy.
Pretty much. Not a good outlook for the economy, and for you as an American citizen, this means your wallet could take a hit.
And it's not just the market in general feeling the heat. Specific industries, like the auto industry, they're really bracing for impact.
Oh yeah, the auto industry is in for a rough ride.
Trump announced these tariffs on all cars and auto parts, all of them. And as a result, auto stocks, they're plummeting. One analysis even said it could mean pure chaos for the global auto industry.
Yeah, and that chaos could trickle down to you pretty quickly.
Right. And they're saying it could add, get this, $10,000 to the price of a new car.
$10,000. That's insane.
I know, right? And Deutsche Bank, they're estimating these tariffs could push the overall U.S. tariff rate to its highest point since World War II.
So, this is a really significant policy shift.
Huge. And what's really wild is President Trump, he doesn't seem fazed at all by the possibility of these price increases.
Yeah, his attitude is kind of baffling.
He said he couldn't care less if automakers jack up prices on foreign cars. He thinks Americans will just switch to buying American-made cars.
Which, is a big assumption.
Right. I mean, can American manufacturers really ramp up production that fast? Will the quality be there? And what about the price difference?
Exactly. There are so many factors he's not considering.
And he just brushed off the term stagflation like it was nothing.
So, as a consumer, you have to wonder, is he really looking out for your best interests?
Good question. And we also heard from Vice President Vance, he's all for these tariffs, saying the U.S. has become the world's piggy bank.
Yeah, that's a line that resonates with some people, the idea that other countries are taking advantage of us.
Right, right. But, he also said middle-class wages have gone down, which, well, that's just not true.
So you have to be careful with the information you're getting, right? Double-check those facts.
Always. And the EU, they're already talking about their own response to these tariffs.
So we could see a trade war brewing.
Which,
Yeah.
never ends well for anyone. Okay, let's move on to something a little different. Elon Musk, what's he up to now? Wisconsin politics.
Yeah, out of all the things, right?
You wouldn't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
So he donated these $1 million checks each to 2 voters in Wisconsin, basically making them like spokespeople for his political group.
That's an interesting tactic. $1 million to be his mouthpiece, wow.
Right, and he's saying this Wisconsin Supreme Court election, it's super important for President Trump's agenda and even for, get this, the future of civilization.
Whoa, okay. High stakes.
Yeah, he's not holding back.
Yeah.
And he's poured a ton of money into this race, over $20 million, supporting this conservative candidate, Brad Schimmel.
That's a lot of money for a state Supreme Court election. It raises questions about the influence of wealth in politics.
Definitely. And the other side, the liberal candidate, Susan Crawford and her supporters, they're not thrilled about this, to say the least.
Yeah, they're protesting Musk's involvement. They see it as trying to buy the election.
Rightfully so. And this is a big election, right? The Wisconsin Supreme Court, they decide on some pretty major issues, things that directly affect people's lives.
Absolutely. Things like abortion rights, redistricting, union power, voting rules. These are big, impactful issues for Wisconsinites.
And there was even a legal challenge to Musk's payments. The Wisconsin Democratic Attorney General tried to stop them, said it was against state law, like offering something of value to get people to vote a certain way.
That makes sense. You can't just buy votes, right?
Right. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court, they rejected this challenge unanimously.
Interesting. So they basically said it was okay.
Yeah, and lower courts agreed. Musk's lawyers, they said these payments were like free speech, protected.
Yeah.
And they were meant to like create this grassroots movement against activist judges.
So it's this whole debate about free speech versus, fair elections.
Exactly. It's a tricky line. And it's worth noting, all 4 liberal justices on the current court, they endorsed Crawford. One conservative justice endorsed Schimmel, who was even seen wearing a Make America Great Again hat.
So, it's not exactly a neutral court.
Right. And Musk's team, they even tried to get 2 of the liberal justices to recuse themselves because they supported Crawford. But that didn't fly.
Yeah, it just shows how politicized these judicial races have become.
Totally. And the spending in this race is insane. Over $81 million. A record.
$81 million. It's like a presidential campaign.
It's crazy. Schimmel, he said he can't control the outside spending, and that when he talked to Trump, all Trump asked was if he'd reject activist judges and follow the law.
That's interesting. He's trying to distance himself from the money, portray himself as impartial.
Right. Okay, let's talk about something a little scarier, shall we? EMPs.
EMPs?
Yeah, electromagnetic pulses, like the kind that could wipe out the power grid.
Oh, right. Like a blackout, but on a massive scale.
Exactly. And this isn't just, science fiction stuff. Professor George H. Baker, he testified before Congress about this back in 2015, drawing on the 2008 EMP Commission report.
So this has been on the government's radar for a while.
Yeah, and he basically laid out how an EMP could happen, either from a high-altitude nuclear explosion or even a really intense solar storm.
So 2 very different scenarios, but with potentially the same devastating outcome.
Right. And this pulse of energy, it can fry electronics over a huge area. We're talking like your phones, your car, the power grid, everything.
Yeah, it's not just about your lights going out. It's about the whole system collapsing.
Exactly. And Professor Baker talked about the different types of EMPs. There's the fast pulse, the E1, which can damage pretty much anything electronic. And then there's the slow pulse, the E3, and geomagnetic disturbances, or GMDs. Those are from solar storms.
Right, and those primarily affect things like the power grid and long-haul communication networks, so things that are connected over long distances.
Yeah, and because our society is so reliant on electricity, for everything, well, an EMP could be catastrophic.
Yeah, no power means no hospitals, no transportation, no internet. I mean, it's hard to even imagine.
Right. It's like going back to the Stone Age. And Professor Baker said that, it's like every single electronic device will just explode.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that.
Right. But because everything's so interconnected, systems rely on each other.
Yeah.
The impact would be massive, like a domino effect.
So even if your phone survives, it's useless if there's no cell service, right?
Exactly. And even relatively small nukes, if they're detonated high enough, they can create this huge EMP. It's not just about, like, massive city-destroying bombs.
Scary to think about.
It is. But here's the thing. Professor Baker said protecting our critical infrastructure, it might not be as expensive as you think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he estimated it could be done for around $30 billion.
That's a lot of money, but I guess in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, compared to the potential devastation, it's not much. He said it would work out to a few dollars per ratepayer each month.
So like an extra charge on your electric bill?
Pretty much. And then there's this idea of a golden dome, which is basically a giant missile defense system, like a shield in space, designed to shoot down any incoming ICBMs.
So like intercept them before they even reach us.
Exactly. And it's often compared to Israel's Iron Dome, that system they use to shoot down rockets.
Right, but Golden Dome would be for much bigger, longer range missiles.
Yeah, it would be a national defense system, not just something to protect a specific area. And President Trump, he's actually been a supporter of this kind of missile defense shield.
Really?
Yeah, he's even called it Iron Dome for America. And he's actually instructed the defense secretary to come up with plans for it.
So it's not just a theoretical idea.
Nope. And this guy, William Forstchen, he's a historian who studied EMPs a lot. He says the technology for a golden dome actually exists now.
So we could actually build it.
We could.
Yeah.
And he warns that the consequences of an EMP attack, they could be devastating, like deaths in the millions.
Millions.
Yeah, he cited these congressional reports that estimate like 80% to 90% of Americans could die within a year if the power grid went down for good.
Oh my gosh, that's
It
terrifying.
is. And he pointed to North Korea and Iran as potential threats, countries that might use an EMP weapon. And Peter Pry, who's another expert on this, he agreed. He said North Korea, they could be developing EMP capabilities right now.
So it's a really present danger.
Yeah. And Pry described what could happen, like cars just stopping dead, planes falling out of the sky, pipelines exploding, nuclear reactors melting down. It's a nightmare scenario.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does. And for you listening, the takeaway is that even if we build a Golden Dome, we also need to protect our infrastructure here on the ground, make it more resistant to EMPs.
So it's a two-pronged approach.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to something a little less world-ending. This leaked signal chat, pretty embarrassing for the Trump administration.
Yeah, not a good look.
So Michael Waltz, he's the national security advisor, he accidentally added Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, to this signal group chat.
Oops.
Yeah, big oops. And this chat, it was about, get this, plans for an airstrike in Yemen against the Houthis.
Seriously, so sensitive information just out in the open.
And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he was in the chat, reportedly discussing details of the strike. The National Security Council, they confirmed the chat is real, and they're, trying to figure out how this even happened.
Yeah, that's a major security breach. You have to wonder what kind of protocols they have in place.
Right. And President Trump, well, he wasn't happy about it, but not for the reasons you might think.
Oh.
He said he wasn't going to fire anyone over this, called it fake news and a witch hunt.
Of course he did.
And he said he still trusts Waltz and Hegseth. And, he emphasized that the airstrike was tremendously successful.
So he's deflecting, focusing on the outcome, not the process.
Exactly. And then he said, and I quote, "I have no idea what signal is, and I don't care."
Oh, come on.
Right. So basically, he's downplaying the whole thing, acting like it's no big deal.
But for you, as an American citizen, it should be a big deal. I mean, if the government can't keep sensitive military information secure, what does that say about our national security?
Good point. And the White House press secretary, she also came out and said Trump stands by his national security team.
So they're circling the wagons.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about this whole third term thing.
Oh, yeah. President Trump's hinting at it again.
He told NBC News that he wasn't joking about running for a third term.
Didn't the Constitution kind of put a stop to that?
Yeah, the 22nd Amendment limits presidents to 2 terms.
So is he just trolling us?
Maybe, but he said there are methods to do it. He even suggested that Vice President Vance could run and then, hand the presidency over to him.
Hand it over? How would that even work?
He didn't say, but he did admit that it's too early to really think about it, said he's focused on his current term. But he also said, a lot of people want me to do it.
His supporters, I guess.
Yeah. But realistically, amending the Constitution to change the term limits, that's incredibly difficult.
Practically impossible.
Right. It would require a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress, and then ratification by 3/4 of the states, or a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of the states.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But there's this congressman, Andy Ogles. He's introduced a resolution to extend presidential term limits.
So someone's taking it seriously.
And Steve Bannon, Trump's old advisor, he thinks Trump will run and win again in 2028.
So they're already looking ahead.
And Bannon even said there are a couple of alternatives for a third term.
I wonder what those could be.
Who knows? But the White House, they kind of fueled the fire by posting this fake magazine cover with Trump wearing a crown and the words, "Long live the king."
So they're definitely playing with this idea.
Yeah, it's like they're testing the waters. So, as an American citizen, you have to ask yourself, is this something you'd be okay with?
A third term, that's a big question.
All right, so that was a lot. We covered Ukraine, the tariffs, Elon Musk, EMPs that leaked chat, and even a third presidential term.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
Right. But what's really interesting is how all these things connect.
Right, absolutely. It's all intertwined.
We see these global tensions affecting what happens here at home, economic decisions having ripple effects around the world, and technology, well, it's both a threat and a potential solution.
It's a complex world out there.
And for you as an American citizen, I think it's more important than ever to really engage with these issues. Do your research, think critically, and form your own opinions.
Don't just take someone else's word for it.
Exactly. We've tried to present all this information as fairly as possible, straight from the sources, so you can make up your own mind.
No agenda here,
Yeah.
just trying to inform.
So, as you think about everything we've talked about, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing America right now? What are the opportunities? What do you think the future holds? It's something to really consider.
Yeah, these are the questions we should all be asking ourselves.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
And stay informed.